Hey everyone, welcome back to our second episode of our podcast. Again, my name is Paolo.
Hi everyone, my name's Ive.
So today we're just going to be talking about some tips about studying as you prepare for your finals, as well as how to finish your quarter strong. We could go into some of the questions that we had prepared for us to discuss today, such as like how we prepare for finals. So I guess if we could reflect back on some of the things we've done, what are some of your tips for preparing for finals?
Yeah, so definitely can remember and understand students' stress. The quarter system is really fast, and 10 weeks will kind of
Mm-hmm.
flash by before you know it, you're during finals. And so, one of the things that I think that I like to remind students is that, okay, so let's kind of reflect and think about where we're at. So we can't really at this point change what we didn't do the entire
Mm-hmm.
quarter, but we can be realistic about how we can set a plan for ourselves for the remainder of the quarter and going into finals. And so I encourage students to really pull out like quarter at a glance, to do a time finder, and to be realistic with themselves and say, okay, how can I break down? What's my plan of attack? How can I break down the hours that I have left, the days that I have left, per classes that I have, um, and when my finals will be, and think about being strategic about the last couple of days,
Mm-hmm.
really, and how to study. And so I think that's the best thing to do. In an ideal world, I think that's why we really try to encourage to be more proactive, or to try to do this a little bit earlier in the quarter. But it's still Monday of 10th week, and there's still some time left to try to be strategic about
Mm-hmm.
studying for finals.
Yeah, I think like that was definitely all the points I would have talked about too. Is like there's only so much you've already done already. You can't really go back in the quarter.
Yeah.
You're at the point now where you have to finish strong and do your best. I think the thing with finals too is that I always forget that how like quickly it comes up. So like
Mhm.
using as much time as I can to really prepare, using that weekly time finder and creating for myself like a study schedule. So
Mhm.
for me, if like my classes had a podcast, I would go back on my notes and see which weeks that like I was kind of like forgetting and stuff like that, and then go over those podcasts. Because going over like 10 weeks of podcast is sometimes not realistic,
Yeah.
but doing your best to get through it and highlight the things that you think are most important or things that you don't really remember from your classes. As well as for me, like I did a lot of rewriting of my notes because I think like by writing it really like ingrained it in my brain of like I'm like a very visual person, so then I
Yeah.
would remember where in my notebook I wrote it, and like during the test, kind of remember like, okay, it was in that part of my notebook. But like, it just like having that kind of organization of where my notes were and like making sure I had touched on all the points in the class and like seeing if there were any practice problems or any like
Mhm.
past finals that were posted on TED, and
Mhm.
then doing those just to really get an idea of how the test might be structured.
Yeah, and I think that communication's key and practice is key, and so being able to communicate, go to office hours. I can definitely understand it's intimidating
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to, think about talking to your TA or with your professor, but I think that's really important to be able to communicate with them and say like, okay, this is kind of where I'm at. This is how I've studied. This is maybe how I've done in my midterms, and how can I best prepare? What kind of advice can you give me, or
Mm-hmm.
tips, or things like that? I think a lot of times professors will try. They'll tend to be, helpful. I think that they try
Mm-hmm.
they try to be. Sometimes, maybe it doesn't feel that way, but I think for the most part, faculty want to make sure that you do well, and so they, might be able to remind you things that you forgot during lecture, or saying, maybe they're going to focus on certain parts of the
Mm-hmm.
readings for the final, or things like that. Or, if a class lets you have, what is that?
Like a cheat sheet kind of
Yeah, like a
thing.
cheat sheet. Take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
Really do focus on, again, what you can do
Mm-hmm.
at this point. there's still a lot that can be done to try to be proactive and prepare you for the next exams,
Yeah.
the next week's exams.
And then for me, I think even though I am a very independent studier, I think having people that I can trust to study with, like in the same class or have taken the class, so that we can talk about it and like see if there's any like gaps in the lectures that I'm like not remembering, and then they could refresh my memory, or if I can do the same, because then I'm in turn studying by like restating it in my own way. Group studying was really beneficial, or at least studying close to people, because then they kept me accountable when they caught me like on YouTube or like on Netflix. They're like, "What are you doing? You should be studying." Having someone to like hold me accountable to my own studying and making sure that like I'm getting it done when I should be.
Yeah. And I think it's great to also be able to be reflective too, and being real with ourselves, like what style is going to work better. And if group studying is really helpful, then don't keep yourself from something that's going to benefit you, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if studying in your room is not the most, you already know, like that's not where I get the most productivity in, then go out and check out the different study spaces that are across campus, off campus. So for finals, a lot of the community centers stay open 24 hours. Oasis will be open from starting this Saturday through next Thursday. Will be open until midnight. And so, yeah, definitely take advantage of all the study spaces that you have available to you, to optimize your studying. And bring friends if that's going to help you out. There's different spaces that you can do some group studying in.
So I guess like what are some tips that you have for the students? I think like a lot of students are so overwhelmed when it comes to finals. So what are some tips you have for staying like on top of it and how to de-stress and stuff like that?
Yeah, so one of them definitely is, I know it, and it's really hard. It might sound counterintuitive, but drink a lot of liquids and get rest. So you need to first take care of your body. Your body is the one that's going to carry you through finals. This is also the time when a lot of students get sick, and it's because you're so stressed. Maybe you're not eating as well or drinking as many liquids, resting up, and that's really important too. I know it's hard, but try, if you can, to try to treat your body good so that it gets you through finals. Another thing is, again, trying to have a plan of attack. I think that works really well. At least I found for myself that it helps, empower me and reassure me, okay, there's still some work that I can do. There's still a lot of I have a lot of power left in how I do, and being realistic, I think it's key. Communicating with your teachers, with your faculty, TAs, and if you find yourself in a situation that's not going to be optimal, don't think, well, maybe it'll work out. Like, don't leave things to chance. Talk to college advisors, talk to your academic advisors, your major advisors, and think of a plan. Also, in the case that things don't work out the way that you hope they do, and being realistic with your options. Plan for a plan A, plan B, and a plan C. And I think that's reassuring and empowering, and it returns control to you when it might feel like there's not a lot of things that you have control over. You can't control the material that it's covered in a class, but you can control how you study for it and how you go forward with the class and your schedule.
Yeah, I think you pretty much said everything I would have said. I think it's definitely about reevaluating yourself. I think if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not obviously going to be able to go through the final to your best of your abilities. So really taking the rest that you need, like you said, drinking a lot of fluids, I think for me, I drank a lot of emergencies during finals week just because I knew at least my first finals week, I remember I didn't know what emergency was. I was like, oh my God, I don't need it. And I got really sick. So I think just remembering like your health is number one. A lot of students forget to shower, don't really eat a lot, like they kind of just, it's all studying and they don't leave Geisel. But I think for me, like taking the time to know like a study plan of like, okay, this day, like if I had a gap in between finals, like being like, okay, give me some time to take a breath and then recharge before I go back into my studying mode. So really like doing like for me like face masks and like different types of de-stressing, like going for a walk, or even going to the beach, hanging out with friends, going out to eat, and just remembering that in order for me to be at my best, I have to make sure that my body and my mental, they're all at its prime.
Yeah.
So.
And if you are thinking, like, how can I get a time finder? How can I, get something like that? You can go on our website, oasis.ucsd.edu. We have a quarterly time finder and quarter at a glance, and a weekly time finder. And so it kind of already has the sheet out for you so that you don't have to recreate anything. You just kind of can look at it. And again, how we've been talking about and how Paulo said, you can look day by day and say, okay, so I'm going to study maybe 2 hours for, math 20B, and then I'm going to take a half an hour lunch break or walk break, and then I'm going to come back and study for this class. And so it just kind of allows you to visualize what your day and your study time can look like, and it lets you be a little bit more realistic and in control. And again, studying like say 4-8 hours in a row is not going to be productive for you. That's cramming, and then after a certain point your brain is not retaining any of that knowledge. And so it's important to take those breaks, small breaks, but that are going to keep your mind refreshed and able to retain the information that you wanted to.
Yeah, and definitely like using things like a tomato timer. That was something that was new to me that I found, I think it was my second year when I found a tomato timer. It was like an app or like one of those Chrome extensions you could add in. It was either tomato timer or Stay Focused or some other awesome tools that will.
There's an app for that.
Yeah, there's always an app for something.
There's an app for everything.
It like blocks out all those like social media websites and keeps you
really?
from accessing
That's actually awesome.
But like on a certain timer, so like 25 minutes of studying, so it'll block out all those like websites for 25 minutes. The timer will go off, and then you'll have a 5-minute break to like catch up on all those notifications and all these things. So there's different ways to keep yourself accountable if you're studying alone, like what I did a lot as well. Using that to kind of keep a timer, and like before 30 minutes of studying and 25 minutes of studying, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes studying, 5-minute break.
Yeah.
I don't know. They said there's like some research on it, like it's a continuous cycle of like giving yourself that break, but also optimizing your productivity within a certain time.
And giving yourself a reward, right? The reward system. And that's real. I mean, when we're so, tethered to our phone and just if you're, really involved in social media, like everyone wants to know what's the latest snap, what is everyone else doing? But if that's going to work for you, to make that a reward system for yourself where you can kind of set it aside and say, I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to just study and focus. But after a certain amount of time, I can look at it. Then, hey, whatever works for you, whatever's going to, help you be more productive. I think it's cool.
Yeah, because I used to be like, I'm going to delete the app. And then I find myself downloading it again after 5 minutes. So just really like learning how to make sure you optimize that in a way that, you're not always scrolling and then watching the same snaps over and over.
Yeah, or just, binging on Netflix after a while. It's real.
Yeah, it's definitely real.
That's real.
Yeah. So I think like now we could go to some of the student questions. So thank you to the students who had sent in some emails. Again, if you want to send some emails, have some questions answered, you could always email syp.ucsd@gmail.com. And we will be more than happy to answer your questions, whether it be academic related, personal related, tips about, or like any insight we have to San Diego or whatever.
Everything and anything that you'd like for us to cover in this podcast, basically just email it to us. Let us know what you're thinking, what you'd like for us to cover in these podcasts, because we want to do what you're going to enjoy listening to.
So I guess like the first question we can start off with is, what are some off-campus places to study?
Yeah, so there are a few places, and so just kind of thinking about proximity-wise, as a student, you have a free bus pass, which is pretty cool, and so there's plenty of bus routes that go and that go through campus and connect to the local community. So there's local coffee shops. There's
Mm-hmm.
basically a Starbucks in every corner. But there's one in UTC that's right next to the Vons, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
I always see students kind of hanging out and studying there. I think those are good places if you kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
coffee shop spot. I know there's like the living room.
Yeah.
It's in downtown La Jolla, and so it's kind of like a loungy
Mm-hmm.
living room feel, a coffee shop, and it's walking distance from the La Jolla shores, and so that might be
Mm-hmm.
also a way that you kind of reward yourself, like if you want to go with a group of friends, do a study group, and you kind of tell yourself, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
study at this amount, and then after a while, we're going to maybe do a little walk. What more scenic place to do it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like since it's by the cove too, just
Yeah.
and there's a lot of places to eat.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of places aren't 24 hours, but if you're looking for some late night places, I know Lestat's is one of them. I think there's 2 or 3 locations. I'm not sure. I know there's one in Hillcrest, and there's one in North Park. I'm trying to remember how to get there, but I'm not sure. You could Google it, list stats. There, like she said, there's the living room cafe. There's coffee shops. I know that I had friends. They would actually study at the Ralph's down there
Yeah.
by over there, yeah, where the Ralph's is.
Yeah.
And there's some study tables over there by the food side. And since I think Ralph's is open 24 hours, you can use their. There's not Wi-Fi. I'm pretty sure there's no Wi-Fi in the Ralph's. But if you're like going there to write a paper or just like need somewhere off campus to go, you can go there. People study at the beach, but of course, like learning how to keep yourself accountable to that actual studying at the beach, and stuff like that. I think those are some nice places.
Yeah.
A friend's place off campus, even.
Mhm.
The San Diego Library downtown, if you want to go
Mhm.
far. It's a really, really pretty library. It's really big, and there's a lot of places to sit in there as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for that question. I guess another thing is, how do I find time to sleep while taking a lot of classes?
Yeah, so that's going to go back to like the time management
Mhm.
that we've been talking about, and weekly time finder and quarter at a glance. And so you've already had a year and a quarter to kind of like get a sense of when you are you are more optimally able to enjoy classes or take in
Mhm.
classes. And so I'd say don't fight that. What you're finding, if you're, a 8 a.m. person, you enjoy getting up, starting the day early, taking your classes early, then, kind of stick with that structure. That's probably going to mean that you're going to probably have to check in to bed earlier. But if that's going to be a system that works for you, then just kind of plan it out. I know there's also apps where they can tell you if you want to have 7 hours of sleep, when is it that you have to go to sleep, and it'll kind of show you depending on like what hour you want to wake up. And so there's an app for everything. But if you're also like a person that's just like, I'm not gonna be able to function before 12 noon, then just kind of plan around that as well. That's probably going to mean that you're going to probably have a little bit later nights, but you're not going to be waking up earlier either. So it's kind of being real with yourself and checking yourself on like, what is it that works for me? Not what works for my friends or my roommates or anyone else, but kind of what works for me, and being real with yourself and sticking to that.
Yeah, that's very important, just knowing what works for you. And like, I think I was always trying to accommodate to my friends' study schedule because I wanted to work with them. But oftentimes I'd find myself like knowing I'm more productive in the mornings rather than like late at night. So just knowing how to manage that for yourself and what works for you.
Yeah, I think it took me a whole year to be real with myself and be like, no, 8 o'clock classes are not gonna. I'm just not gonna go. I didn't go, and that I'm sure affected my grade and how I performed. So, just being real. One quarter I tried having, because someone was like, I have all my classes Tuesday, Thursday, and so I don't come to class Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. I tried it, and it was the worst thing that I could do, because then I was here all day Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that sucked.
Yeah.
So just being real with yourself and what works for you.
Awesome. And then I guess the next thing, now thank you for that question again. Another question that came up was, what are some study tips you recommend when it comes to STEM classes?
Yeah, and so for this, I'm going to encourage you to visit actually our Oasis website again, and MSTP has some great tips there. And so again, you just go oasis.ucsd.edu. We have the different tabs. The Math and Science Tutorial Services has their own tab, and they have a tab that's actually called How to Be Successful in Lower Division Math at UCSD. And so I won't read through all of it, but I'll read through some of the tips because I think they're great. Which is, math is not a spectator sport. And so you have to be attentive. You have to go to lecture. You know, you have to ask questions. Don't just sit and copy everything that's written down. Instead, think ahead about what the next step's going to be in solving the problem. So read the book. I know. It's like, do I have to? But you know, it helps. And just like social science course, read the book cover to cover. The book has a lot more to offer than just what is boxed or bolded. And so you kind of have to read through. Practice makes perfect. So you have to practice, right? To practice problems, to learn the material and to practices. And so doing all the homeworks, doing more of the practice problems. Don't cram for exams. I know it's hard, but you know, it's especially with STEM and like classes like math, it's cumulative, and so it builds on itself. And when you cram, you're not really processing and learning the things, and so you know, there's more chances for you to make mistakes that way. So another tip: don't cower from office hours. Kind of how we were saying, it's going to help you in being able to communicate with your TA, with your faculty, and for them to communicate too with you what they're expecting. Maybe they might give you some tips and pointers that they wouldn't say during lecture, or they forgot to say, but you're getting because you're going in and talking to them. So collaboration is the key. Learning is a social process. It's more beneficial to work in a study group than to study alone. So another great tip, right? And again, one of the best places is Oasis. Don't wait till the last minute. Get help. Attend our workshops. We have study tables throughout the quarter. So just keep a positive attitude. There's nothing worse than the frustration of struggling with difficult material. However, if you can view it as a challenge rather than a problem, you're much more likely to get through it unscathed. And so, again, visit our website. We have a lot of cool tips and tricks and stuff like that for you.
And I think those tips are also transferable to other non-STEM classes as well. Definitely going to office hours, communication, using your time wisely, and going to office hours. All of those things, staying positive, all are really beneficial for you in all of your classes and can be used for any of those. So thank you for that question. And I guess last one could be like, how do you manage stress, and like how do you find time efficiently, especially during finals week?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. And so, you know, the thing about stress, and I think it kind of goes maybe down to fear too. And I know maybe the times that I'm most stressed is because I'm scared of something, right? And so, one, sometimes it's good to feel a little bit of pressure because that's what encourages us or pushes us or nudges us sometimes to, you know, get a little bit out of our comfort zone to try to learn. And so being a little bit stressed when you're learning material is not a bad thing, but you don't want to have too much stress because then you're not really learning and taking material. So if you find yourself that you're on that end of the spectrum where you're just really overwhelmed, you're really stressed, there's a lot of, I mean, we could have a whole podcast on this actually, but just a few things, again, I find for myself that is, you know, maybe just taking a moment and stopping and saying, okay, what is it that I'm afraid of? What's worst case scenario? How do I prepare for that? So, you know, being real with myself and am I going to pass this class? What are the real chances? And, you know, there's a GPA calculator that you have that, you know, UCSD allows or gives you access to. And so you can kind of plug in and look at, you know, how do you have to perform in each class and how is that going to translate to your GPA? You know, maybe you need to go again to college advising, to your major advising, and talk to them about like a couple of different scenarios and what happens and what do you do from there. I think that the more you do those things, the more in control you feel. We want to also, you know, say that there's a lot of services on campus that can help you. I know CAPS, shout out to CAPS, they have a lot of workshops throughout the quarter, and some of it is like on stress management and test taking anxiety, and those are real things a lot of students struggle with. Just this weekend I went home, and my youngest sister, who is about to start college, she just she just finished the application process, and she took her SAT for like the third or fourth time. And I was like, why are you taking it so many times? She's like, because I get so nervous, I get so anxious, and I don't do as well as I know I can. And so it's real. Like, it happens to a lot of us, but there's a way. Again, if you know yourself and you know that that's a challenge that you struggle with, then being proactive and seeing how you can manage that beforehand is going to be the optimal thing for you. So, CAPS has a lot of great resources online on just this alone, a lot of different things. But if this is one of your biggest challenges, in ways that you can look at different apps or just steps and things that you can do to try to manage that stress so that you're going to still be able to take your exam.
And I think that was the most important thing, is just being real with yourself of when you're feeling stressed, like taking a step back and realizing, like, okay, in order for me to perform well, I need to be at my prime. So I think ways that I practice stress management was to always continue, like, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, just like, taking a pause and remembering, like, the work is always going to be there for me to do, but in this moment right now, it's important for me to, like, make sure I'm okay. So I would do a lot of, like, mindful breathing exercises. Like, on YouTube, you could even look up, like, guided meditation and stuff like that, and just helping me make sure that I'm at a zen of, like, continuously being, ready to manage that stress, because I feel like if you let it accumulate, it's just going to make it worse for you to be able to manage it after some time. So just in that moment when I was feeling stressed, knowing that, okay, it's going to be there for me to do, but right now, in order for me to get to it, I need to make sure I'm okay. So doing mindful breathing, going for a walk, talking it out with someone, using, like, say, like the drop-in mentoring, even if you need something like that, just utilizing resources like that to make sure that you are taking care of yourself.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I've learned, it took me a long time to learn, is that when I feel really stressed, I have, like, there's this, it's built up energy. And so one of the ways that I found really helpful was running. I don't do as much of it now as I would like, but, taking a quick jog or just kind of releasing some of that tension and energy it's really good too. And so just, again, finding what it is for you, what is going to help you, what speaks to you, not doing something that for someone else, but if you love, doing kickboxing, or if you love drawing, or if you love swimming, like doing what's going to speak to you and help you, give you the tools to surpass challenges is going to be the best thing that you can do.
Yes, definitely. So I think we could end our podcast there. Just wanted to remind you all of some of the things we talked about. So if you were looking for places to study, remember that Oasis will have its Study Madness, so starting this Saturday. So on Saturday, December 9th, Oasis will be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then Sunday, December 10th, from 10 a.m. to midnight. And then all through the finals week, Monday to Thursday, it will be open from 5 p.m. to 12 midnight. So that's one place you could study. Of course, there's also the community centers that will be having 24-hour study hours. There's usually some free food, some resources you could use there. They will be released soon. So at least for the Monday of finals week, the cross-cultural center will be open. Finals week, cross-cultural center will be open 24 hours, and then the rest of it will be released sometime this week as well.
Yeah. So again, just remember, taking a pulse, taking a moment to take a pulse for yourself, or seeing where you're at. If you're stressing about something, just finding ways that you're going to kind of, take that energy other ways that are going to allow you to still study and do what you need to do, and being proactive with the remainder of your time that you have to study. Being good to your body, drink and sleep, drink liquids, a lot of liquids, and, eat as well as you can, and just getting your rest as much as you can as well is important. Being real with yourself, taking, your resources, accessing your resources. If you need to drop in mentoring, if you need to go and talk to academic advising, both at your college and your major, doing that, communicating with your professor and your TA, and just being proactive, have a plan, have a strategy, do a time finder that's going to give you the most peace of mind and allow you to have control of the things that you can control.
Yes, and definitely. So we want to wish you all the best of luck on your finals week. We look forward to seeing you next quarter. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at syp.ucsd@gmail.com.
You got this.
All right, yes, do work. All right.
Yay.